A quick disclaimer before we begin, the PEMF podcast does not contain any medical advice, and the content provided is for informational purposes only. If you have any health concerns, please visit a healthcare professional. So hi guys, welcome back to episode 23 of the PEMF podcast, and today we're joined by such a special guest, Ollie Ollerton. Some of you probably remember him from SAS Who Dares Wins in the UK and also the Australian version. But more recently, his Breakpoint Academy, which we'll come on to later. So, Ollie, if I give you the floor, if you can introduce yourself, please.
I think you've already said it for me, though, Andy. Ollie Ollerton, former UK Special Forces soldier, former SAS Who Dares Wins on Channel 4, and current SAS Australia. I've also got my own business, the Breakpoint Academy, which has always been my passion. Well above the TV stuff and everything else. I'm a best-selling author. I've had 5 books out now, and I am a constant creator.
Good stuff. So, actually, you mentioned your book. I've been reading Breakpoint, your first book.
Yeah.
And actually, I really struggle to read books. I'm someone that kind of doesn't sit still for very often. But I've really enjoyed it. It's been such a great pleasure to read that. And my wife's been looking at me thinking, who is this guy? Reading the book now. But no, I encourage everyone to pick that up, and we'll come on to that a bit later on, actually. So, for the benefit of our audience, we're more in the health space, and something that you've been looking into a lot more recently. Entering into the biohacking space. From your previous in the special forces, I feel like you've always been pretty physically fit, but maybe your struggles with mental health, but also your kind of relationship with alcohol has been a bit of a problem for you throughout your life. And maybe you can give us a little bit of context for the benefit of our audience.
Yeah, for me, it's like I was speaking about this morning. I've got a friend here at the moment, so we were in this sauna this morning, and I was just talking about that. It's like I go back to my days as special forces, and a lot of people think, oh, well, a special forces guy must be really sort of rounded and grounded and such an all-round great person. But looking back from where I sit now, I'm so much more of a fuller person than I was back then. I think I was very good at what I did. I could shoot straight, I could swim fast and for long distances. I was in the SBS, so a lot of work under the water, but really I wasn't that strong as in a full 360-degree spectrum person. I wasn't, I was very linear back then. And when it came to fitness and health, it was really everything about fitness and health back then was external, and I think a lot of people have got it that way. I know the majority of people, especially when you're young, look at fitness in that perspective. It's how you look from the outside in. So you really, at the end of the day, you're doing all your health and fitness and everything to please the audience. Mm-hmm. This is why people are so addicted to going to the gym. And I've met a lot of people. I think, were you at Body Power or something, Andy, some years ago?
One of the exhibitions.
Yeah.
We've been to a couple of exhibitions that have linked up with Body Power.
Yeah, no, the reason I was saying, I thought we'd had a conversation previously, but no, I think it was someone else that I'd met at Body Power. But we actually did the Body Power event with Breakpoint, the company, and he was quite. I've never met so many insecure people. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And it's really, I'm not, I don't mean to give them a hard time or anything, but the fact of the matter is, a lot of it was all about, a lot of that muscle and everything else, and that external sort of expression of who they were was built out of insecurity. Mm-hmm. Do you know? And I think
for the external kind of validation and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And that's very much, for me back then in the Special Forces, I was very much also driven by I had to be a certain level of fitness to perform at my job. Mm-hmm. But really, everything was all about the external. It's all about, the job I had to do. So externally, I had to be strong in this, that, and the other. And then more recently, like when I left the Special Forces, I just let everything go. I think I rebelled so much about, I've been in an institution where I was forced to be a certain way. And once I left, it was almost like I just was the biggest rebel ever. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? I didn't really concentrate a lot on my fitness. I was taking steroids, all kinds of stuff. I was heavily drinking, and not really looking at my fitness from an insider's view. And it took me, I'm jumping big spans of time now, but it got to a certain point where, and we'll probably fill some of these gaps in a bit, but it got to a point in my life when I was at my lowest ebb. I'd sort of been bouncing all over the world doing things, and then I came back and I had a breakdown basically, and it was, started thinking about suicide and things like that. And it was at that point, it sounds like the worst time of my life, but it was in some respects, but it was also the best time of my life because it was the first time it forced me to look within, not just on a physical aspect, but on a mental aspect, that I realized that anything that we want to change in our outside world is an inside job.
Yeah, yeah. So people don't
So,
understand, from what's going on from the inside. So what
yeah.
led to that point, do you think? What was happening in your life at that moment that led to that breakdown?
Well, really, for me, it's just I was like 43 back then, and I just had a whirlwind of turmoil behind me. You know what I mean? It was drink, drugs, all kinds of stuff. Just that absolute abuse. And no situation ended well. And it was just this turmoil, this constant turmoil. And I just, in the end, this is where I got to the end. And I went, this is Breakpoint. This is when I said, I've had enough. I'm no longer allowing my past to reflect who I am in the future.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
So that's when I decided, I needed to change the mold of who I was.
Mhm.
Um, and that was, that kind of thing doesn't happen overnight. But, I think once you become aware that, you know, um, we are programmed to believe that everything is external, whether that's happiness, health, everything is an external fix. And for me at that stage, when I broke down, and it was like it forced me into a corner to take responsibility for where I was. It's like we can blame. We're so happy to blame the outside world for all these things that happen to us. Whether that be the military or this, that, and the other, ex-partners, other people, blah blah blah. But it's only when you actually take responsibility. And for me, I was in a bad place. A lot of abuse, a lot of drinking, and really, yeah, these things had happened to me in my life, but I was there because of my choices.
Yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
was that was when you was in Baghdad, was it? When you had an episode of drinking, and was that at the point in which you was thinking, this has got to stop?
Well, that was a point in Baghdad that happened. The actual point I'm talking about is actually when I got out of Baghdad and then I went across to Southeast Asia when I was involved in child rescue operations
Mhm.
from human trafficking, and it was when that kind of thing imploded and I had to escape out of Thailand, and I got back to Australia. And this thing that I found, which was more powerful than the military, it was like I was so humbled to be a part of it, and I thought I'd be doing it for the rest of my life. And then all of a sudden, it came crashing down. It was almost to me like it was just something else in my life that had just fallen apart. Something great that had happened that just fell apart. And I had a series of that happening throughout my life. So this was later on. This was coming back from Southeast Asia, and I was in Australia at that time. And that was at that time when I just went on a rampage, mate. It was like it wasn't pretty at all. It was like just this self destruction, self abuse, and it came crashing down. It was like all those years of turmoil finally came to a boiling point, and that's when the lid finally blew off, and it was like, right, you need to change this. And that for me was typification of breakpoint. And then because really for me that break point is when you're having that breakdown, it's a breakthrough. As long as
Yeah.
it depends how you frame things. You can frame things as an absolute disaster, but when I actually looked at it, it was so powerful for me because it was the breaking down of something old and something broken and something that didn't serve me anymore, but it was the birth of something new. And really, in those moments when your life is falling apart, I call it pain screams the loudest when it's dying. It's actually, as long as you can embrace the fact that it's the death of something that doesn't serve you and hold on to the fact it's the birth of something new, then you can look at it in a positive light. And that really for me was where I was at. So that's why I call that my greatest battle, but my greatest discovery.
Yeah, no, okay. So you got back to the UK, you say, and that's when you started making that change. And who decided to make that change? Was that you, or was that external influences? Like, who had the kind of biggest influence on your mental state at that
Yeah, it's a
point?
good question, and probably not one, at the end of the day, Andy, I did what I look back at this and I don't advise anyone to do it the way I did it. And that was the fact that I didn't seek external help. I was always putting on the smile to everyone else from the outside looking in. It looked like everything was great. And I was, it was a big lie. But for me, I was sick of myself. I wasn't prepared to be me anymore, or the person I knew moving forward. So it was really me that made that decision. And I said, right, life's got to change. Something's got to change. I've got to change the blueprint of who I am. And that's when I came back to the UK, 2014. Didn't even know about the TV show. And fortunately for me, my family had a spare house in Cornwall, and I locked myself away for. I didn't know how long I was going to lock myself away for. I just knew that I was going to put myself into a repeat, sort of regular discipline pattern, focusing on three things: mind, body, and nutrition. And I was going to make sure that there was no distractions. I was the most important project there was, and I dedicated myself to that in the house. I was still drinking at the time, but I was managing to fight it in the week and then just get drunk at the weekends, which is still not a solution, but it was still a step in the right direction. But it was really starting to focus on me, my mindset, changing the blueprint of who I was, and it was incredible, absolutely incredible.
No, that's really good. So if say for example someone that is in this position now and they're looking for advice as to where's the first point to start. So maybe it was where you started, or what advice would you give someone to, what's the first step for them?
Uh, I think really at the end of the day, you've got to, self-awareness is the biggest thing, because a lot of people subconsciously don't know they're doing anything that's wrong. If they're not aware that the habits and behaviors that they conduct on a daily basis, are they serving you or not? It's a simple question.
Hmm.
I knew, simply for me, I knew, was drinking heavily serving me? Was taking drugs serving me? Um, and all those sort of behaviors, my actions, everything. It's just a self-analysis of the things. It's like putting into a list. What are the things that are serving me and what are the things that aren't serving me? But the thing is that I believe you need to do before that is, like, you need to come up with a vision of who you want to be.
Hmm.
And that was the most powerful thing for me. I realized, well, before getting into that house, that um, the more you hate or the more you focus on anything, the bigger it becomes. So I was sat there going, how come I hate so much about my life, but it keeps just getting bigger? That I keep getting a repeat of it. How come that happens? And then I started to think, so what's the opposite of what I'm doing then? And the opposite of what I was doing was I started to create an image of who I wanted to be.
Hmm.
So really, in those moments where you're just in this loathing, hating yourself kind of view, hating everything around you, just all this sort of negative emotions, you've got to start fixating on something, somewhere you want to be. What does that look like? And that for me was creating an image of who I wanted to be. And once I got clarity on that image, I added emotion to that.
Yeah.
So what does it feel like to be that person? And then I made sure constantly that was my dominant thought. And that is the one thing that turned my life around massively in a very, relatively speaking, short space of time. So really, it's getting yourself out that repeat habit loop. And we're addicted to habit loops. That's part of our survival process. We're actually addicted to repetition. The mind loves repetition. It wants to keep on doing what we did yesterday and the day before and the day before that. Because as far as your mind is concerned, it's kept you alive until today. Doesn't care if it's a good situation or not. It just wants to keep you in that repeat habit loop because it's familiar and it's safe. And for the survival mind, that keeps the species evolving.
Yeah,
So really, for
100%.
me, breaking that down into simple terms is you need to first of all become aware of the things that are no longer serving you, and then start to create a visualization of what you look like in the future, and start to remember your future as opposed to your past.
100%. And I think so, would you say skipping forward a few years now, so where you are
Mm.
today, are you where you want to be? Are you in that space? Are you in that headspace? And maybe we can talk about how you got there.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say. I, I just believe life. We should always. I think the answer to a lot of there's a lot of obviously focus on mental health and everything else, and I think really for me the answer to mental health is your mental wealth. It's the investment in yourself. How much are you investing in yourself on a regular daily basis? Um, so really for me, it's like I think the answer is the fact that we always need to be looking for something bigger, because regardless of where you are in life, whether you're doing okay, you got your finances squared away, everything's good. If you're not always challenging yourself and aiming for something bigger, you'll start to plateau, and that really is where at the end of the day, your mind, your soul doesn't really understand the benefit of having a nice car, a nice house, and this, that, and the other. It just needs to feel challenged. And if we, in the absence of that, we get bogged down with the mundane, and our life becomes pretty normal and quite boring. And this is why even people that have got everything that you could wish for, sit there in a very depressed. I know a lot of actually very unhappy millionaires,
Hmm.
and it's
Yeah.
just the fact that they simply aren't challenged. They're not feeling the zest of life. They're not feeling they're always. And I feel the answer to that is the fact that we should always be aiming for something bigger. So to say I am where I want to be today, I'm extremely happy with who I am, and I think this is a point we need to focus on as well. Is the fact that we spend so much of our lives in fear of the future, in regret of the past, and not living in the now.
Hmm.
And it's about really trying to live in the now as much as possible, because that is the only moment that matters. So I mean,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
I do on a regular basis, but I'm always aiming for something bigger. And my life is constantly evolving. Like I'm moving here. I don't I don't say to myself, I'm going to be here for the next 10 years. I'm constantly thinking about going some change in my environment, doing something else, being this constant evolution of change. And that just keeps me fired up and it keeps me enthusiastic. And my business goals are that big that I'll probably never achieve them in my life. So it's a constant thing that I'm striving towards, and that is my goal. My business goal is simply to change as many lives as possible, and there's only one of me. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
something I will never change the whole planet. So it's something that's going to keep me busy for the rest of my life.
Yeah, yeah. And it's quite a spiritual side to yourself as well, isn't there? Like I've been listening to you quite a
Definitely.
lot.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Yeah, I
Mm,
think I think really, if anyone is, if anyone negates the spiritual side of who they are, I think they're missing a massive element of of any kind of fundamental change. If anyone's following any kind of mental program, if it hasn't got a spiritual aspect, then it's incomplete. And I am an absolute true believer, and whether people snigger or what, I'm an absolute true believer that we are um, a spiritual being having a human experience. That's as simple as it is for me. And it's like, but then again, there's a lot of people on this planet then striving to be so spiritual, they're losing the actual human experience. The fact of the matter is, we're here to experience. We're here to to um to explore and really expand the soul and our consciousness. And that's the meaning of life. But it's to say that we're not spiritual is just it's bad education.
yeah. No, 100%. I agree with you. So let's talk about your biohacking at the moment. And yeah, and you
Mhm.
messaged me before this, sort of saying that you're looking at your health now in a different perspective and more of a cellular um, kind of
Yeah.
perspective. So what are you doing at the moment to improve performance and to help with your mental space? And what does the day in Ollie's life look like at the moment?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I tell you what, I actually laughed when you said um, biohacking, because it's funny because I've never considered myself a biohacker.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I've never termed myself as a biohacker, but I do believe a lot of the stuff I do is deemed under the biohacking space. But really, I've been doing it. I've been focusing on that kind of ethos for a long time now. It started for me, really, the main thing was water. When I started to look at how what we're composed of, the majority of who we are is water. You know what I mean? So you've really got to look at the quality of water that you're consuming, that then obviously is feeding the cells. So, one thing I learned years ago, probably way back as 10 years ago, is that the water that comes out the tap is absolute poison. And I've rarely ever had a glass of water in the last 10 years out the tap. Um,
No, and I
and
agree with you.
starting,
I mean, I'm sitting here. I'm always drinking some kind of you know,
yeah,
bottled spring water or mineral water or anything like that. So
exactly.
yeah,
It's so
I've always got
important.
one to hand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because the water that you get out the tap, when it comes down to your cells, it doesn't actually penetrate the cells because the water quality is that bad. And this is why a lot of people get high blood pressure, because what happens then is, because it's like you don't get the salts and everything into these cells, they start to expand or bloat, and that causes high blood pressure. So when you start to find out a lot of information about this and understand that, when you look at each cell, like each cell has about 1.4 volts thereabouts, not much, but 50 trillion cells
Hmm.
thereabouts. That spins you out when you actually think about that. 50 trillion cells, 1.4 volts. We are a massive energy. You talk to a lot of people and you start mentioning about energy, and they put you in a box straight away and label you as one of them, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. But everyone says, everyone understands, like, oh, I went into the room and there was people in there and the energy was really weird. They'll say that.
Mm.
But when you start talking about energies of the body and everything else and your auras and all this, that, and the other, they start to get a bit freaked out. But this is how you need to look at your health. You need to look at your health in a cellular level. And that's why we go back to what we started talking about, is we're thinking everything's external. I'm going to go to the gym because I can pump some weights and then my abs are going to look great and my arms are going to look great and everyone else will go, you're great. But really, if you're not healthy from the inside, it doesn't really matter what you look like on the outside. And it's really important that we start to understand that looking good should be a byproduct of feeling good, which is, and like going back to the mental stuff as well, it's everything's an inside job. So really for me, a long time ago, it started with the water. And then I was very conscious of the foods as well. The foods I started to eat, so it's like staying away from anything that was processed, all this stuff, low fat milks and all this kind of absolute crap. There's been this real miseducation, since the last, the Second World War. After that, there came in all these sort of guidelines and everything about the low fats and all this, and it's that has absolutely caused mayhem on the system. I mean, you look at people walking around these days. I mean, you go to a beach like in the UK, it is not a pretty sight. You go back there in the 70s and beyond, you'd find it hard to see someone that was overweight or obese.
Mm.
And I think there's been so much of this bad information education. And I think it's really getting back to the root cause. Also, sorry, getting to the source code. This is what I call it, getting to the source code. And the more complicated you make it, the more distress it puts on your body. Like, all the processed foods and everything, and the more, ingredients in foods, it's going to wreak havoc on the body. So I started to become invested in that. And then as time has gone on, I mean, my routine is pretty crazy these days. And a lot of people would, yeah. I don't advise anyone starting out to follow my routine, but for me, it's so really important that I'm very disciplined every day. And I like, the first thing I do when I get up in the morning is I make sure, which a lot of people do, I don't reach for coffee at all. You know, the last thing your body wants as soon as you wake up in the morning is a toxin, which coffee is. I'm not saying I don't drink coffee, because I do, but I make sure it's high quality. But the last thing you want to be doing is reaching for a coffee. It's only your mind that's telling you that you need a coffee. You don't need a coffee. So for me, straight away, I mean, in the morning, I have a mixture. Sometimes I have freshly squeezed organic lemon in warm water with Celtic salt.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I don't do that, what I've done for a while, is I have a teaspoon of ginger, a teaspoon of half teaspoon of cayenne pepper, a teaspoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of turmeric, a tablespoon of MCT oil, and then I mix all that up with warm water, and I have that first thing in the morning. And then I'll always wait at least about 60 minutes till I have my first coffee after that. And it's really important that you abstain from that caffeine first thing in the morning, because there's a whole reap of benefits when it comes to your sleep and your circadian rhythm and everything else. You know, I don't profess to be an expert on this stuff, but I do. It just makes, for me, it's common sense.
It's whatever works for you, isn't it? Really. So
yeah, whatever works
if
for
it
you,
works for you,
absolutely.
then
But you know, yeah, I think really at the end of the day, when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's a lot easier to tell people what they shouldn't be having.
mhm.
You know, I mean, there's so many. I go to the gym and start a local gym from time to time, and you know, all these healthy people in there with their can of Monster, and you're like,
Mhm.
what are you doing? Yeah, absolute
Yeah, yeah.
madness. You know, this stuff is absolute poison. So really, for me, it's like I will then have that drink in the morning. I'll have my first coffee 60 minutes after that. And when I have a coffee, I have that with a bulletproof coffee. So I have a mixed powder, actually, bulletproof mixed powder. Have you seen that stuff?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I have that, and I have collagen powder in that coffee as well. Mix it all together, and that's my first coffee. And then from there, I'll go up to, in between that time, I've actually gone up to the sauna. I've turned the sauna on, so that's waiting for me. I go up to the sauna after that coffee, and then I start sort of the physical aspects of my daily routine. And that is half an hour in the sauna. I've got an infrared sauna, and I sit in there. I do some meditate. I do breath work in there. I've got an AeroFit. Have you seen those?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great little device.
So I've got an AeroFit. I've just started using that at the moment to really start to expand the lungs and get some, you know, readout on the my capacity and everything else.
Mhm.
And then I'll spend 15 minutes doing that thereabouts, and then I'll do 15 minutes meditation, and then I go to my ice bath, which is in the same room as that, and that's about just over a degree, so the ice is nice and thick on the top.
Yeah.
And I'm up to about 3.5 minutes in there at the moment. So, which I find is amazing. You know, it's like I got to the point last year where I was like, if I see someone else jumping in an ice bath on Instagram, I was going to eat my phone. I was so sick of seeing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
I'm
like,
I'm the same, and I'm right down that route as well.
yeah, but the thing is, I mean, and I'm still frustrated with it, because a lot of people that are doing it don't understand the reason why they're doing it,
Mm.
and they're only doing it but to create interesting content on Instagram.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so, and they're you know, and this again, it goes back to the thing of why, you know, when you do these things, ask yourself, are you doing it for you, or are you doing it
Mm.
to please the audience?
Yeah, 100%.
Um, because when you're pleasing the audience, you've got no longevity in it. It doesn't last. You know, you
Mm.
have to have a reason and a purpose. You know, I have to have a reason to sit in ice cold water for 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, when I understand the dopamine spike that it gives me for a long period of time throughout that day,
Mhm.
you know, a whole range of benefits, but you know, how it attacks those fat cells, um, and also builds my immune system, um, and also, but the main thing for me really is the fact that the mental game.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's so powerful, because even now, when I know that I can sit in an ice bath for 3.5 minutes, I actually, you know, after the initial shock, I do start to enjoy it. I zone out, I get into my own space, and I love it. But the thing is that I've still got the mental game going on beforehand. My mind is still trying to steer me away from it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I find it so interesting, because at the end of the day, you know, we are 95% program. And that program for us was installed between the ages of 0 and 7.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the initial program was stored. That's when your mind is on record. It takes in everything from the environment. You learn more in those years than you learn your whole life. So really everything we do, I think it's past the age of about 30, you are 95% program. You only have 5% creative capacity. So really for me, getting in the ice bath is that program's trying to take over what I'm trying to do. It's trying to sabotage that. Don't do this. Go and check your email. You haven't got time to do it today. You worked hard enough yesterday. How about you do it every other day? You don't need to do it every day. All this stuff, it's always going on. And now when I can separate the two and I go, yep, that's the program,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm in control.
Yeah.
I'm deciding what goes on in this moment right now. Back off. And I think that's so powerful when you can learn to do that, because you learn to rewrite the program when you do that. There's only 3 ways you can really, generally speaking, 3 ways you can really start to change the program of who you are, that 95% of the program. And that's obviously the 0 to 7 is the start when you first program. The second one is a highly impactful emotional situation. That can be good things, it can be bad things. And then the third thing is practice, repeat. So if you want to change the program, first of all, you've got to understand the habits that you are no longer serving you, that are holding you back. But then once you've done that, you've got to push yourself into that sense of discomfort on a regular basis to reprogram yourself. And, relatively speaking, it's exactly the same as when you learn to drive a car. You jumped in a car for the first time ever. You're with some stranger that you don't know, telling you what to do. There's all sorts going on. There's indicators, you've got pedals everywhere. You've got mirrors, you've got other people on the road, you've got people walk. There's so much going on. You think you're going to have this cognitive overload. You think, how am I ever going to be able to do this? It's just so crazy in your head. But over that period of time, you pass your test and everything else. A year later, you're driving down the street. You don't even think about what you're doing. You've got the podcast on, you've got your Costa coffee or whatever. You're like having a conversation with someone. You don't even know how you've got to your destination.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because it's become part of the program.
Yeah.
It's subconscious. It's a subconscious program. That's exactly the same with any kind of new behaviors that you want to overwrite some old habits that are no longer serving you. It's a constant state of practice, repeat. And that's really why my business is called Breakpoint, because you're stepping into the short-term discomfort for long-term gain.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the only way you can change who you are.
Yeah. And I agree with that. When we're talking about the ice bath thing, that for me, the first, well, like you say, getting in is the first hurdle. The first minute and a half for me is a mental battle. It's kind of like get out, and then actually, like you said, the second minute and a half is almost enjoyable.
Yeah.
But for me, the best point of an ice bath is actually afterwards. What I tend to do is stoke the fire, especially in the winter. Get in there, put some nice socks on, and sit in front of the fire, and that feeling for the next hour after that is just incredible. Great mental space to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got to jump in, Andy, because I forgot to say, part of my routine before I've actually come downstairs, because I've got it upstairs now, I use my PMF mat.
Yeah, I was going to come on to that.
Yes, I know you were. So I wanted to jump in. So basically what I do before I come down now is like I'll set my alarm half an hour earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and then I lay the thing in bed. So I lie in bed and I do that every morning. So I'll put it on the morning program with 20 minutes. And I've been doing that. Well, I've had the mat for a while. I can't remember. I think I've had it a few months, but just recently I've been using that every day.
Yeah.
The last month or so, I'm doing that as a regular, my everyday routine. So the PMF mat, and then I haven't got into the habit of using it twice a day yet, which I think I might need to do. But really, for me, that 20 minutes is sat on there. You know what? It's really interesting as well, because a lot of this stuff, it's like a lot of the stuff I do, you don't sort of instantly, some of the supplements and stuff and all this, that you don't like go, oh, I'm just taking a supplement. Wow, this is amazing. But I think you can only actually understand sometimes the benefit of something when you stop doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's like, it's quite interesting, because last week, I didn't get up as early as I wanted. So I had to not use the PMF mat. I was like, I haven't got time to do that this morning. So I had to come straight downstairs. And my morning was scattered. And I don't know, look, I don't know, you're the expert. I don't know whether that was anything to do with the PMF mat, but I came downstairs and from a mental standpoint, like my morning was scattered.
Mhm.
Whereas I usually had this like PMF mat, my drinks, everything, then go up to the sauna and the ice bath, and then I go into a gym routine as well. That day for me was a mess. It was
Yeah, and
quite
and that's
interesting.
100%. It's a feedback we get quite a lot because especially with PMF mats, there's with the intensity that comes with most of the mats that you use at
Mm,
home, you can't feel anything. There's not a sensation, it's not jumping in an
yeah.
ice bath. You don't have that instant freeze. You don't get into a
Ugh,
sauna where you've got the hot. So some people kind of struggle. They're using it for a week or 2 weeks, and they think, I don't really feel like anything's happening.
yeah.
So the worst thing that some people do is they send the device back, and then all of a sudden things change, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Wow, I miss it. I didn't realize all these small benefits that were happening until it wasn't there." So it's that kind of absence of something that was really working for them. So yeah, it's good feedback, and it's something that our customers often report back
Yeah.
to us.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, I've made sure I've used it every day since then, believe me. And it's
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
for me, it's like, again, I just feel really energized. As soon as I step off that mat, as soon as the beep goes on the module, the control unit, as soon as that beeps, I'm like off, I'm like spring up, I feel energized, it feels amazing. So yeah, I mean, it's something that is a regular part of my daily activity. And like I say, I think I would start to benefit maybe if I started using it a second time during the day, maybe later on in the afternoon. What are your thoughts? Because I'm not sure. Should I use it before I go to bed? Is it gonna, if you do you have
yeah.
to make sure it's on the yeah? What's your
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
100%. So, it could be just to give people's perspective, you're using the Accelerate device, aren't you? So
Yeah,
to understand the programs that you're using, so you're using the morning program in the morning, which is great, and it's got higher
yeah,
frequencies. But actually, if you've got time to use the evening program, that one is set to a much lower frequency. So it's actually going to start bringing your mind down, kind of bring you to ease, less thoughts, and that's going to help you with sleep. So, um, for me, sleep is super important as well as
the
everything that happens during the day. With the night mode on that device, I stick it under my pillow, and that's on the delta frequency, so it's like pulling you right down into a deep sleep. So, yeah, for if you've got time to do it, and with that device, you can stick it on the sofa. So if you do get some time for the TV, I'm not sure how much you watch the TV these days, but
yeah.
if you've got another
No, I
time in
think
which
I
you sit
think for
down in
me,
the
I mean, I
evenings.
make sure. Sorry, I make sure that I read. The last thing I do before I go to sleep is read.
Mhm.
I think that's really important if people, because it's so easy to like you become a slave to that. I mean, telephone. I'm not saying telephones are demons, but they can be if you're like constantly plugged into it. And one thing that I constantly try to do, and I notice the difference of when I don't do that, is like an hour before bed, is make sure you're away from any kind of screen device. Um, and there's moments when I've thought, oh no, so I need to take this up to like do a little bit of work before I go to bed, or look at my diary or something. As soon as I do that, it messes up my pattern of sleep. So I mean, one thing I will do with that is like I'll always read for 20 minutes or so before I go to bed. So I'm going to actually put the mat in the evening and do that. So I'll stick to doing that twice, and then we'll see how that goes. But
Yeah,
just
definitely
using it in the
do.
morning has been amazing for me. So
Yeah. No, let us know. And so the last thing I want to talk about on the kind of health perspective is I saw that you did a 3-day water fast recently.
yeah,
And that is something I wanted to understand because I've done a 24-hour fast, and I found that pretty difficult.
uh,
And seeing you do 3 days without any food whatsoever, and I don't know whether you've taken that from your special force training or if you've got any tips as to how you got through that.
yeah. No, I'm really glad you brought that up because I think it was a process that I started before that actually helped me do that. And this happened. This actually happened around about the end. It was December the 31st, and I ran a dry January campaign. So a lot of people doing dry January. I don't drink at all anymore. So for me, I was like asking everyone to do this thing, and I was like thinking, well. you do every month. So it's not really, I'm not kind of joining them. I'm not doing something every day. So I thought I need to do something every day
Hmm.
that sticks with that dry January campaign that puts me in a level of discomfort as well. So I chose two things at that stage. And that was, I've always understood that I need to start doing a bit more mobility. You know, I mean, I've been this kind of person that throws into like the first set in the gym as you warm up, and and as you get a bit more mature, that starts to really, become significant because my joints are getting stiffer, my muscles are getting stiffer, and I've always known that I needed to do some kind of mobility, some kind of yoga. And I've tried it before, and my mind said, "Oh, it's so boring. I can't be bothered." This, that, and the other. So I said on the 31st, right, what I'm going to do every day is I'm going to find a micro habit, a micro goal
Hmm.
that I have absolutely no reason that I cannot do it.
Hmm.
Regardless of where I am all over the world, even if I'm in a hotel room, I can still do it. So for me, that was 10 minutes yoga every morning. Now, I also said that while I was here, and obviously I can't take it on the road with me, but I would do the ice bath as well. So there's two things that takes me about 2 minutes. I was doing 2 minutes back then. So all in all, that practice was 15 minutes yoga, 10, 15 minutes yoga, and then a few minutes in the ice bath, a couple of minutes in the ice bath. There's no reason apart from the bullshit my mind is telling me that I can't commit to that and make it non-negotiable every day. So I
Hmm.
stuck to that. And it was like on the first 14 days, it was so interesting because it went back to that. This is boring. Why are you doing it? This is stupid. And this is, new habits and behaviors. It doesn't have to be hard to make, if it's against the grain of what you usually do, your mind will not want to embrace it. And it's really important. It really was important for me over that first 14 days. My mind was in turmoil, like, don't do it. You don't need to do it today. You got too much on. You got this, that, and the other. And it was like constant awareness of that. And then telling myself, stop listening to that. That is the program. I'm in command here. You have got 10 minutes to do it. And I committed to it every day. And it went from a why bother doing it in 14 days to there was a turning point around 14 days' time to going into I could not do this.
Hmm.
It's like this transition, this turn over 14 days. So anyway, I got past that 14-day period and I was really then starting to get engaged with doing it. I couldn't see a day when I wouldn't want to ever do it. Um, and at that point, I then saw a water challenge, like a water fast. There's someone I followed on Instagram, or I respect his point. I respect his opinion. I've never done a 3-day water fast, and that doesn't mean no water. That means only water for 3 days. For those that don't know, um, so I just thought at that stage because I'd forged that discipline. I thought I'm going to try this, and honestly, it was like I went into that with the strongest frame of mind. I do believe it was because I started those micro habits the 14 days earlier.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and now with it as well, you've got to then start to understand, like, you've got to look into the benefits of why you do this stuff. Again, if you're doing it because you think it looks cool and it's great content for Instagram, it's short lived and you just make it painful. But there's so many, and I am certainly no expert at all. But for me, like a water fast, 3-day water fast gives you it's a brain and body reset. It's so important that we do this on a fair. I haven't done one since, but I'm going to do one. I mean, what I have gone into now is after that 3-day water fast, I'm now actually do intermittent fasting. I don't eat. I don't have my first meal till around about 11:30, 12 o'clock every day now.
Hmm.
So,
And
but
there's a lot
you
of
can't
benefits
just
that
throw
come with
yourself
those.
into.
Yeah.
Say
Go on.
again, sorry.
I was saying that there's a lot of different benefits that come with fasting, isn't there? That people are starting to look at now.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
weren't
And
kind of programmed to eat the way we structure our food these days. So
no, I mean, when you look at evolution, go back to our primal days. What do you think they'd have done then? Like cavemen or in your primal days, you wouldn't get up and have a big feast. You won't get up and have a load of sugar. You know what I mean? You
mhm,
get up and then your whole in the morning you'd be out running around hunting for food.
mhm,
And that's the way we've evolved. We've been evolving for a lot longer than than our current days on this planet. So we are still of that. When you look back to that, you start to appreciate that. And having this. I mean, a lot of people are. we're programmed to believe that you should have like dessert for breakfast as your first meal. It's like absolute ridiculous, refined sugar and all kinds of sweetness and this, that, and the other. But um, so yeah, the 3 day water fast for me, I just found I wouldn't say I found it easy, but again, I found it so interesting about how the mind, my mind that was so used to the regular pattern and routine of eating
Yeah.
that was more powerful than the desire for food.
Hmm.
It's like, because, every time, especially because you are hungry, your mind's going, oh, I'll go in now and I'm something to eat. That's what I usually do. And then you go, oh, I can't do that because I'm doing a 3 day water fast. And
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
I find it so interesting when you play with the mind like that, and you can sort of really start to work with it as a, your weaknesses and strengths, you encompass as one and work together with them. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
for me, it was like amazing. I felt amazing, and that that first meal after that, I broke the fast after 3 days was incredible.
Yeah. I bet.
And I was actually taking another product then as well, and there's a product called ASEA. Have you seen that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was taking a liter of ASEA as well, which is really, that is cell rejuvenation. It's really amazing stuff. So I actually take that every day now.
Mm.
But yeah, so I took that every day, 3 days, and yeah, I found it no, but I felt amazing after that. I felt amazing actually through it. I mean, I didn't throw myself around the gym too much. I was light exercise every day, and still did my sauna, I like my mobility and my saunas and ice bath. But yeah, I just felt amazing. I think it's amazing when we can do this stuff. It really does help to reset the digestive system and everything else. But it's a brain and body reset. You can look at some amazing stuff on YouTube about that. And I'd suggest for anyone, if you have got any health concerns, don't start throwing yourself into a water fast and stuff like that. You need to get professional advice before you do that. And I would say with anything, look, just make sure that you've got advice before you throw yourself into this stuff. But it worked great for me. I loved it.
Yeah. Good. So, I mean, Ollie, I can talk to you for hours on the health side of things.
Yeah.
There's so many things we could talk about, but let's bring this to Breakpoint and Breakpoint Academy,
Yeah.
and maybe just to give us a little bit of context on what a breakpoint is. You've touched on it already in this podcast, but maybe like your first major breakpoint in your life, and then we can lead on to what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people know the story because I've put it out there a fair bit, but my first break point and really where the company name stems from was a time when I was at the circus 10 years old, and I was somewhere I shouldn't have been, as they were just setting up the circus, even before it opened. And I found myself in this enclosure, and I was engaging with the baby chimp, and it was starting to feed me. We were engaging. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. And then all of a sudden, this like serenity of that moment was broken as I heard the roar of its mum or dad, that was clearly saw me as a threat. 10 years old, and absolutely came on a rampage to kill me that day. Because I was a threat to its young. Um, and this chimp flew through the air about 20 foot, pinned me to the floor. The blue sky turned to black as this thing landed on top of me. And then it started to try and just rip me apart. And there was blood and stuff flying everywhere. And I started, my life flashed in front of me, albeit it didn't take long. I was 10. So,
Yeah.
and then in that moment, it was like I realized, I could feel the flesh being torn from my arms and stuff as it was ripping chunks out of me. And it was in that moment, I went somewhere that I never knew existed. I found this inner strength, this inner power to retaliate. And in that moment, I managed to retaliate against the chimp. I managed to get it off me. I scurried across the floor trying to get away from it. And then as it got back to its feet, it came on its final attack to get me. And honestly, I was sat there waiting for it to kill me, basically. And it was an inch away from my face before the chain caught it. It's obviously
Wow.
restrained by a long chain. If it wasn't for that chain, I wouldn't be here today. But really for me, that is the reason my business is called Breakpoint from that moment. Breakpoint for me is when you step into that short-term discomfort for long-term gain. The short-term discomfort for me that day was being attacked by a grown chimp around about 50 kilos. I didn't get a chance to weigh it, but it was heavy. Um, but for me, it was like the short-term discomfort was fine. A chimp, 10 years old, 50-kilogram chimp, and the long-term gain of that was me living to tell the tale. But also for me, it was so powerful for me to understand that we have far more potential than we're led to believe. And it was tapping into that inner potential that helped me get through special forces selection twice, once with a pretty much fractured, broken ankle on my final attempt. But also when I went through my mental health battles and everything else, and on the verge of suicide, it was tapping into that inner strength that pulled me back from the brink of that. So it was a really powerful experience, a really defining experience, and that really is, like I say, how Breakpoint got its name. The thing is, the way that we're wired, the majority of people on this planet, we're wired to look at short-term comfort. And if you're constantly taking that short-term comfort, that's going to do the opposite thing and will lead you to long-term pain. I believe this is my theory, and I think a lot of people will resonate with this. I believe this is where the conflict lies. When it comes to our survival instinct as a species, our evolution, there's nothing more important than the continued evolution of that species. As far as your survival instinct is concerned, it will be quite happy if you sat in the corner of a room, ate food, and procreated. As long as the species survived. That might sound appealing to a lot of people, but it would get boring after a while, believe me. But then we have this other side, our soul, that wants to experience. It wants fuller expression. It wants to experience great things, and this is where you have the conflict, because your evolution of the species, your survivor in you, doesn't want you to jump out of airplanes, doesn't want you to join the special forces, doesn't want you to ride motorbikes. It doesn't want you to do anything that's going to put you into any kind of level of danger or stress. And really, I feel if left unobserved, that survival instinct will be your dominant mindset. And this is why people don't step into discomfort. We're wired to take the easy option. We're wired to go the path of least resistance. And everyone knows that if you allow that to happen, you are not going to achieve anything in life, and B, have a very unfulfilling life that can lead to depression and all kinds of self-abuse issues and everything else. So really, for me, Breakpoint is allowing people to understand that we have to engage in that challenge each and every day. We have to embrace the discomfort of change. And if I have to define Breakpoint, it is a disruptive change in habitual behavior in line with a predetermined goal. Any kind of change in your habits is going to be disruptive. Your mind is going to be reluctant to embrace that change because it's not been there before. It's not familiar, which means it's not safe. But we just have to understand that we have to embrace that short-term discomfort. And as long as we keep on moving forward, it's temporary. The discomfort is temporary. And
100%.
if we allow that if we play into that that sort of survival instinct, it will keep us trapped in what they call the comfort zone.
Yeah.
And there's no comfort there. This is the funny thing. There's absolutely no comfort in the comfort zone. And I'm not going to say, there used to be a time where I used to demonize the comfort zone. And I do believe there's a time and place to sit back, relax, do nothing, eat whatever you want, go through Netflix, look at Instagram, social media, whatever. But you shouldn't set up camp there.
Yeah.
It's not where we should stay permanently. And the thing is, a lot of people have set up camp there, don't want to leave. And that really, for me, is where you have an extremely unfulfilling, unhealthy life full of dis-ease. And that for me is something that I'm trying to educate people on. And that's really the motive of the Breakpoint Academy, is to creating a globally identified brand recognized for the positive growth and development of others. That is our mission.
Excellent. No, thanks for that. That was a really good explanation. So for people who like are listening to this and want to be involved in Breakpoint, is this more about you coming to them? Do they join like a forum? Do they come to you? How does it physically work?
Yeah, we've evolved a lot since the early days back in 2015 when the TV program we launched a company at the same time for obvious reasons. And really, it was a lot more physical back then. There's a lot more people coming to us. We used to hold a lot of events, and then we realized, we saw significant change in people over 1 to 2 days, but that change wasn't permanent. People would go back to the same life, the same routine, and then they'd go back into the old habits and behaviors of who they were before. And we realized that to affect long lasting change, people need to be on that journey for you in the long term. So more recently, we've just evolved into having our own platform, which is the Breakpoint Academy. And that is, I don't like to call it an app because it's more than an app, but it's delivered through your handset. It's delivered through your computer, your desktop, whatever. And that's really a number of programs where people go on a journey with us, go on a journey with me. I've actually got other people coming on board now. So, but really strong characters with a really interesting story that people can actually use as a mentor to help them drive positive change in the future. So we haven't yet released that to the public, but I think around about May, June time, the Breakpoint Academy is soon to be released to the public. At the moment, it's more of a corporate tool, so we're doing a lot of work with corporates, but we will be releasing that into the public domain in around about May, June time. And it's an amazing platform. It's linked with AI, so it's got all my content in there. You can actually have conversations with me through the AI function, which goes into all my content and everything. It's like tapping into my brain for answers and my theories and everything else. So it's really an amazing platform. So we're very excited for that. So people can jump on board and just understand that, positive change and happiness and fulfillment isn't like a fad diet. It's constant. You need to be constantly moving forward. You need to be constantly engaging in that to get the benefits of it. You can't pick it up and put it down. I've done that in the past. You go on a bit of a journey. I need to change stuff about myself. You feel good. You drop everything, think I don't need to do that anymore. And it's like, you just end up on a roller coaster of life of ups and downs. So for me, I'm so now absolutely passionate about being engaged in that self-development. Every day is a school day for me. I by no means deem myself as an expert to anyone. And there's so much to learn out there that my life's not long enough to learn the amount of information and knowledge that there is out there. So I just find it so interesting every day to be learning new stuff. Every day is a school day, like the cliche dictates.
No, that's good. So how can people get involved in this? Have you got a website they can sign up to a mailing list or?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got the Breakpoint website. So it is break-point.co.uk. You can register on there and you'll be first to be informed about when we launch the app to the public.
Excellent. Okay, we'll leave that link as well at the bottom of the podcast. So,
Fantastic.
Ollie, I could sit here and talk to you for hours.
Likewise, mate. Maybe we'll do it in person next time.
Yeah, 100%. We'll come and see you, and we'll do a part two, and we'll talk about more of the health hacks.
Yeah, but
But
no, I just like to say on the back end of that it's the PMF Mat is absolutely amazing. And again, it's one of these things. It's like if people just do. A lot of the toxic stuff out there is just, it's just a little percentage here and there. People don't understand, it's just like not any one thing is going to cause you like may kill you or whatever, but it's all these little bits of everything that leads to your unhealth or lack of health. And it's the same when it comes to the positive, when you're looking at your really investing in your health. It's like, the PMF Mat for me it contributes to all the other stuff that I'm doing.
mhm.
You know what I mean? So it's building in these elements, all these different things into your lifestyle. Start to really focus on your health on a cellular level, which the PMF Mat is focused on doing, and all the other health hacks and everything else. But it's really starting to look at yourself and being conscious of what you're consuming, what you're thinking, and how you're moving.
Yeah,
Simple
and
as that.
like you say, it's a great complementary therapy,
Oh,
and a really good starting point for a lot of people. You know, people that maybe don't want to throw themselves into a bucket full of ice to start with, and maybe want to
yeah.
do something a little bit more comfortable.
Good.
But yeah, thank you again, Ollie.
Thanks
Just for
again, mate.
our
Really enjoyed it.
No worries. I mean, just for our subscribers and everyone listening, if you can give us a 5-star review on Spotify, we can encourage more guests like Ollie. Please like and subscribe to everything we're doing, and we'll hope you tune into the next one. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Take care.